When you're dealing with a young generation that has a misunderstanding about masculinity and the definitions of manhood are being villainized.
Sure.
My question is, how do we grab those guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. My experience, and we talk about it from time to time in our class, that, hey, that young man down the street from you that doesn't have the father, or the father figure, become that father figure.
Some of you guys in the Jasper County area may know him, but I've known him for a number of years. Man, we hooked up back, I guess you was on the south side of town. Now you're on the north side of town.
Now I'm on the north side.
Now you're on the north side. Well, some people say that's salvation, so,
Amen.
You have been involved here over the past, how long have you been involved specifically with Ironmen? That's one of the reasons we wanted to sit down today.
Yeah, I guess, Jay, I'd been going to Harvest Church for about 17 years.
Okay.
And shortly after I started there, I started going to a men's disciple class.
Okay.
Which was actually led by Robbie Lovett.
Okay.
Robbie kind of mentored me for a while as I went to that class, and he pushed me forward to run the class and kind of head the class up.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so I just felt like it needed a name instead of disciple class, so I started calling it Ironmen.
Yeah.
And so it's just like kind of iron sharpening iron.
Very cool. Very cool. So tell us when you guys normally hook up and meet, because there's a lot of guys out here, man, they're looking to plug in somewhere, but they don't. Some folks are, hey, I don't want to go to church, but I'll hook up with some guys at a Ironman meeting, this type of thing. When do you guys hook up and meet?
Well, we now meet the first and third Thursday.
Okay.
We've got a couple locations on the church grounds that we meet at.
Okay.
It's 6:30 every night
right.
On the first and third Thursday. We used to do it every week, and which I was devoted to. But my wife, she's grown in her walk. She wanted me to go to some small groups with her.
Right.
So now we're just doing it twice a month.
Twice a month.
First and third Thursday.
How do people get involved? Like, say they want to reach out and just touch base with you guys and see if they can participate and that type of thing.
Sure. Well, a lot of people just call me on my cell phone.
Okay.
And I can be reached on that at 936-552-6752.
Okay.
Or we have an app at Harvest Church, which you can go on and find multiple different small groups and activities that we've got going on.
Okay.
But you can download that HC app, which is basically Harvest Church of Southeast Texas.
Okay.
And just go to the App Store and download our app, and then you can click on that
you can find
app.
Ironmen.
Yeah, and you can go to the bottom of the page.
Okay.
And Ironmen is at the bottom of the page. It'll tell you a little bit about us and what we do, and have some pictures and things like that. But you can also plug in and basically enter to come to the Ironman class.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Very cool. What are you seeing specifically with the plight of men these days?
Well, Jay, after dealing with men for quite a few years, there's a big variety. Mm-hmm. There's old school guys like me. There's the younger generation coming up. We call it spiritually, some are on the milk and some are on the steak.
Right.
But I think a lot of men today, especially today's generation, are lacking leadership from a father or a father figure. A lot of times, mom's raising the kids.
Right.
And it's so important, even at church we found that if the man's bringing the family, 83% of the time the whole family's going to come. If the woman is the leader of the house, it's down to about 35 to 38%.
Okay. So, it's interesting, I was talking to a group of people here a while back, and, we were just volleying around ideas about what's happening to society. And I said, there's always been an accusation out here about women who have daddy issues. And I said, to be honest with you, men and women both suffer with daddy issues. If a dad is not in the home, that is problematic all the way to adolescence.
Exactly.
And it's problematic just from stability standpoint, not financially as much as it is psychologically.
That's right.
How do we change the tide? Because it almost felt, there was a report came out last year, said 77% of young people 17 to 24 are not fit for military duty because of obesity, because of drug use, and because of mental health issues.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
And I'm sitting here going, 77% is not a small number. I mean, at some point, Guatemala could attack us, and we'd be in a
Yeah.
we'd be in a bind. I mean, how do we turn this thing? Because it's almost like it's easy. It would be easy to just flip through the channels, if people actually flip through channels anymore. I don't know what they do. But looking at the news and what all was going on, it'd be easy to get hopeless about our current state.
Sure. I don't know if it's so much in Jasper and Newton and Tyler and Sabine County.
Right.
But a lot of the other counties with bigger towns,
Right.
More concrete, a lot of the seniors in high school, the boys, they don't even know how to change a flat.
Right.
And of course, I'm sure your dad,
Sure.
my grandfather, I was blessed to even know my great-grandfather. He died when he was 99.
Wow.
And we followed them around,
Yeah.
and we learned from them.
Yeah.
And we had those people, whether they done everything right or not,
Right.
we learned how to work and how to do just normal daily tasks.
Yeah.
And today, a lot of the kids are, I don't know if they're doing Nintendo today. They're certainly doing the cell phones, whether it be Netflix or Facebook or whatever the social media is.
Right.
But those phones have basically replaced the flashlight, the clock, the computers.
Yes.
I mean, I can go on and on to where you all have it in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
And that convenience has actually weakened, I think, our men and our boys in today's society.
It's kind of wild because I was listening to a report that came out specifically from the military. They said that they are experiencing higher levels of stress fractures in the hips of young men coming through basic training. Stress fractures in the hips. They said that that's not an unusual occurrence with females in early training of the military, right?
Right.
But because there is no level of work or stress placed on those hips before they get to basic, it's becoming a problem.
Sure.
I mean, we're growing up in a plush society. We're growing up in this kind of self-serving DoorDash type of way. You don't even have to get up to go get Taco Bell anymore. They can actually bring it to you. It almost creates like this sedentary concept,
Sure.
And the sedentary life, along with selfish entertainment, seems like it's becoming more and more of an epidemic.
Yes.
Well,
not so much my dad, granddad, and great-granddad, but my mom, I can remember her telling me multiple times that I've always wanted you to have more.
Right.
And not have to work as hard as I did.
Right.
And of course now, you and I as grown men, probably our kids, and then even more so our grandkids, have had it pretty soft.
Yeah.
You look into just our government, how you basically are paid more to sit home today, or just a year or so ago when COVID was out, and that kind of has still rolled over into and lingered into today. The lifestyle is, I'd rather sit home and just draw a check than I had to go out and actually work.
Yeah.
And of course, the Lord's word says we're supposed to sweat by our brow.
Sure.
And so we're engineered by God to actually work for a living.
Right.
And then with our generation, it was physically work.
Yeah.
Not so much the computers and things that they have today.
Right. Yeah, I remember hearing just thinking about the old timers. You know what I'm saying? And I remember hearing a comedian say, he said, I tell my kids it's my job to make sure you have something to talk with your psychiatrist about.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of interesting because it's almost like society has bought into this soft, white glove. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure our children don't suffer in any way, shape, or form. And to be honest with you, the only thing that really has made me grow in my life is suffering.
Yes.
Suffering is the only thing that has either pushed me or drugged me.
Sure.
Either way,
So true.
And so I guess from your angle, when you're dealing with a different groups of men, because I mean you have guys who have mothers that are more predominant in their world,
Mm-hmm.
and you have men who don't have parents. You have men who have strong fathers or even absentee fathers.
Sure.
How do you communicate to that wide range of men?
It's that's a difficult task to tackle. In our Ironmen class, hey, the old guys, they're coming there faithfully and they're getting there early.
Yeah.
The guys that are 35 to 40, we see quite a few of those guys as well.
Right.
They're faithful as well. It's the younger group that is harder to reach. Yeah. And harder to get them to be consistent. Yeah. On showing up. And so for whatever reason, it just seems to be there again, as we're talking about. It could be a lack of the father in the household. Yeah. Instilling those values and those things that are important to a man. Right. Because, for me, I don't want to be 15 minutes late. Yeah. And if you're on time, you're late. Yeah. So I always like to be early. Yeah. That's not a lot of the mindset of the younger generation. Not at all. So it's difficult to reach these younger guys. Yeah. And the way that we're trying to do it is from a spiritual aspect. Yeah. Once we can get them to understand God's word and the things that Jesus done, the sacrifices he made for things that he didn't have to. Yeah. That's kind of that old generation mindset is, they didn't always talk about it, but they were always sacrificing for the sons and for the daughters and for the wives. Yeah. And they didn't always, discuss it. Yeah. It was kept inside. Guys had to have pretty wide shoulders because they had to tote that burden around. It wasn't something they talked about a lot. Right. Today, as you said a while ago about the psychologists and psychiatrists, if anything goes wrong, oh my God, it's just their lives are falling apart. Right. And that suffering that you're talking about is just part of what happens. Yeah. The Lord suffered for us. Yeah. And so we're supposed to go through some things as well. But as you said, that makes us grow. Yeah. We become more intelligent when we have that experience. Because a lot of the younger guys haven't experienced, they haven't been exposed to the things that the older guys have. Yeah. I remember growing up where men didn't know how to communicate very well. That's right. And so in order to kind of, I don't know if they were doing it intentionally or just inadvertently happened, they would demand that we would be on a project doing something. Sure. Come out here. We need to clean up these beehives. Or whatever the situation was. Right. Or come out here. We need to change this oil in this truck or whatever. And it's almost like for a generation, because I would even say this: most of the baby boomer generation were the first to actually start articulating to their children. Yes. And so it's kind of wild now. It's like we're now over-articulated. Right. If that makes sense. It does, and on the other side of the spectrum, these older guys, the older generation that, have learned to work and not talk about things. And that's the way I was brought up. We didn't share stuff too much with anybody, especially another man.
Right.
And very seldom with your wife or someone.
Right.
But there again, spiritually speaking, that's another thing that I've learned because of the Ironmen class and because studying God's Word.
Right.
Jesus said, love me more than anything, and then love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
Well, when I first started this walk, I didn't want nobody coming up and hugging on me. Not a man. Don't put your hands on me. I might go ahead and cut you on the chin. But because of the Lord and His Word, I have learned to love my neighbor.
Right.
And not have that prejudiced thing that even some of us was raised with.
Yeah.
But as I walk into the church today, as men show up at our class, we're hugging and loving on each other.
Yeah.
And that's hard for this generation of mine and yours and our fathers and grandfathers. That was tough for them.
Yeah.
They didn't want a man touching them and having that love your brother mentality.
Right.
And so there's things that we have to change on as well as the younger generation stepping up to be men.
Yeah.
Because they're being taught today, you can change your gender.
Yeah.
You can go in the same bathroom.
Right.
I mean, all of these just crazy things that have been brought on to this generation and taught by social media, and it's just it's a fine line to where and one thing that I've learned on my spiritual walk is I judge no one today.
Right.
I used to be pretty judgmental.
Sure.
I could size somebody up pretty quick.
Right.
But today, you never know. I've learned you never know where their walk has been. What is that guy gone through? Yeah. And so I try to keep an open mind, especially because I have all type of different guys coming to my class.
Right.
I'm gonna let the Lord do that judging on people.
I think the older we get, hopefully that establishes more empathy.
Yes.
And it's, I heard somebody say one time, they said, if a person doesn't have empathy, they haven't had their face kicked in enough.
Yeah, well, some of us need humbling.
Right. But it is wild. The older you get, the more you do have more of an empathetic type of profile, because, especially once I just turned 47, so I'm well on the 50 side of this thing at this point. And, you start adding this up and start looking at scripture, you're like, oh, dang, man, this is more than halfway over. Yeah. If God holds out and my heart holds out and everything's good, I might see mid-80s, but we're so it almost like in that revelation, you kind of go, wow, okay, all right, back up. Back off the throttle here. Yeah. We ain't got to run and be so harsh and be so, judgmental, like you say. Right. So with dealing with a new generation that has, for all practical purposes, a watered down definition of masculinity, manhood, all those things, and a society that is constantly dripping new understanding and new definitions and these new angles. I just recently learned about furries. I didn't even know what that was, and I'm just like, are you serious? These people think they're animals. This is the world we're living in. Yes. When me and you first met, this wasn't even a conversation. No. This would have been ludicrous. Right. It would have been a Saturday Night Live skit. Yes. And now we're sitting here going, what in the Sam Hill is going on? You know what I mean? So when you're dealing with this, I guess my question is, when you're dealing with a young generation that has a misunderstanding about masculinity and the definitions of manhood are being villainized. Sure. My question is, how do we grab those guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. My experience, and we talk about it from time to time in our class that, hey, that young man down the street from you that doesn't have the father, or the father figure, become that father figure. Take him hunting. Take him fishing.
Right.
Show him how to do the stuff that men like to do. And even women like to do those things, Jay. But there's not many women that really like a weak man.
Right.
There's no woman that I know of saying, well, I want to marry a weak man. I want to marry one that will be submissive to me. Most women want a leader in the house.
Right.
And they want a masculine man, a man that will stand the ground, that will protect and provide. And so that's what we need to be to those young men. We need to mentor these young guys. We need to sow some good seed in good ground.
Right, right.
And make a difference. There's blessings for that. I think God favors that.
Sure.
Because, every situation that a woman's in without a dad for the kids or a husband, multiple things could have happened why he's not there. But when we see those things, then we should step up to the plate and be the man, help mentor those kids. And that's what we do some in our class. I try to kind of take that role on when I can, because a lot of those guys, the younger guys that are coming, didn't have that dad, and they're in that place about, which way do I go? Who do I become as a man now that I'm an adult?
Right.
So we just have to help those guys, give them some spiritual direction and some mental direction as a masculine man.
Right.
And hope that they can pick those things up.
Sure.
That would be my answer.
So with the group that's, say, between 30 and 40, a whole different ball of wax.
Sure.
Completely.
But there again, the spiritual aspect of having a godly father,
right,
being raised in a godly environment,
right,
hopefully going to church.
Sure.
And now anybody can slip and fall back in the ditch.
Right.
The Lord says it's a narrow path.
Yeah.
But if you raise your child up in these ways, they'll come back to it.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier about, having to go through some tough stuff.
Sure.
The Lord lets us go through those things, but we have free will.
Yeah.
So because we have the free will, a lot of people are going to slip in the ditch.
Yeah.
But we always have to be that brother to reach out with that hand, that father, that mentor, that father figure,
right,
to try to pull those guys out of the ditch and even out of drug abuse.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean,
any kind of abuse.
Yes, any kind of abuse. That's well said. Yes, because there's so many things out there with the social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you click on one thing wrong,
right,
and then here comes a whole line of pornography and things that I think influence this newer generation.
Yeah, no doubt. And to me, it's almost like, I used to appreciate, I think one of the characteristics I appreciated the most about my grandfather was that nothing rocked him. Nothing rocked him. I saw hard messages delivered to that man.
Mm-hmm.
And he sat there, kind of rocked in his rocker.
Yeah.
He just looked out the window. And then after he died, he had this military chest from World War II.
Mm-hmm.
We found out real quick, why he was so anchored.
Sure.
Because, sitting there looking through the old Polaroids or the old pictures, those black and white pictures of bodies stacked 3/4 of the way up the picture and a small bulldozer pushing them in a hole.
Sure.
But as a young man, I'm sitting there going, man, this guy, I want to be like that guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I want to be steady.
Sure.
I want to be a rock for my family.
Right.
But that rock ain't built unless it's beat on.
That's true.
It kind of goes back to your iron and sharpen iron type of thing, because, It's almost like, the suffering that he went through gave him a stability in his relationship with the Lord
Mm-hmm.
to really kind of not be rocked or swayed.
Sure.
And I think for men in a lot of ways, the call to action to say, hey, our objective here as men is to protect and to serve those around us.
Sure.
And to represent the life of Christ. Those elements, just that simple, but that call to action almost seems like somehow or another it's getting through the cracks, because if you start looking statistically at the church, not in a good position. And I'm not talking about Harvest, I'm talking about the church as a whole.
Sure.
We're kind of looking at some bad statistics right now.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, all the things that you just said, your grandfather and that type of thing, the things they've went through, those guys like myself, know that the word says, be still and know that I'm the Lord.
Yeah.
Because he's the one that's in control.
That's right.
And a man that has that mindset, he's probably a pretty content guy.
Yeah.
He probably can sit on the porch and rock.
Yep.
And not worry as much, because we know where all of our good things come from. It comes from him. So that's my mindset, is to be a content man with what I have, to know that God is in control.
Right.
And that he's our provider and our protector. And, most guys that have that mindset, they're not even afraid of death.
No.
You take the disciples, once they knew that they knew, mm-hmm. they were ready to go die for him, and did.
Sure.
And so those men, nobody wants to look at that death in the face.
Yeah.
But that man that's content, he's probably not afraid of death.
Yeah.
And so this generation, a lot of them they can't see far enough down the rabbit hole to have those feelings yet.
Yeah.
They haven't suffered and went through those tough things that some of our forefathers and our relatives went through.
Right. And I'm not, even when I talk about suffering in a way, I don't exalt suffering. Mm-hmm. Suffering sucks.
Sure. Nobody wants to do that.
But I mean, it's almost like, in a way, suffering is the only, I heard a guy say one time, he said, we're not getting out of this life alive.
That's right.
He said, so the quicker you wrap your mind around that and you understand that it's probably going to be a painful experience on some level,
yeah.
You can anchor yourself better in your walk.
That's right.
And so, is there anything you want to put out here to say specifically to these young men? Some challenge. Maybe they just catch it on YouTube, or maybe they just they're intrigued on some level because they don't have a man speaking into their life or something along those lines. Is there something you want to say to them?
I've changed a lot of things in the last couple years.
Okay.
Number one, just my health. Learning about nutrition.
Yeah.
Learning about, hey, take your shoes off and go out and walk on the ground and get grounded.
Yes, sir.
So just those little small things like that are something that I think relates to the younger generation. They're in the house.
Yeah.
They're on the TV. They're on the phone. They're not out in nature.
Right.
And they're not getting the full understanding of what a beautiful world this is God's created.
Yeah.
So if we could just put the phone down and walk out with the mom and dad or the kids, go to the park and just live life, Jay.
Yeah.
Not everything revolves around our phone and social media and this technology. We need to get back to some of those old school things that our grandparents and parents done. Hey, go grow something, put something in the ground. We've got a community garden at Harvest where we invite anybody that wants to come up. We got planter boxes and rows of rode up and ground broken, and just getting out into nature.
Yeah.
And getting your hands dirty.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids today, they don't want to be dirty.
No.
They can wear holy jeans.
Sure.
But they don't want to get dirty.
That's actually an interesting insight, because the only way we got holy jeans back in the day was wearing them suckers out.
You bet. And then we put patches on them.
That's right.
And then they made fun of us when we went to school. So that's part of that growing too.
That's true. That's true. Is there anything you want to say to like your 40-something generation? Because, I mean, technology is kind of wide sweeping on everybody at this point.
I guess I think one of the biggest things that a man at any age that gets married should stay married.
Okay.
We don't always make probably the best decision about who we chose as a partner.
Right.
But what I've found is we need to work on ourselves being that right partner. So much not looking for the right partner,
right.
Becoming the right man.
Right.
And then you'll attract the right partner.
Right.
And divorce is hard.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's a lot easier to stay married and work it out than it is to get a divorce, because that's what a lot of people today do, especially that 30, 40 generation. They just throw the towel in.
Yeah.
And so I would say stay married, stay faithful to God, put God first.
Right.
I can remember I got raised 4 girls.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I got down on the floor with them and talked to them about loving God more than they loved the kids and their husband.
Right.
It's a pretty tough deal.
Yeah.
But when we put God before everything,
yeah,
He works all the other stuff out.
Sure.
It's not always in our timing.
Sure.
A lot of times it's in His, and we don't always understand that.
Right.
But when we look back on that situation, we know God had His hand on it.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Stay married, stay faithful, read Scripture.
Right.
Get in a small group. You can come to the Ironmen class.
Yeah.
We'll do our best to.
We'll help man you up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's cool. It is interesting what you're saying there, specific to divorce and, I would say marital suffering.
Yes.
Because I don't think that generation. I don't think a husband and a wife that are going through struggles understand the level of fusion that happens on the backside of those struggles, because they're in the middle of the struggle.
That's right.
And I think one of the things that maybe has not been communicated very well by healthy marriages is that, hey man, listen, you're not going to die.
Yeah.
Just breathe.
Right.
Go find something to eat and chill out, and you guys continue to walk. Sometimes all you can do is just sit there and feel the suffering together of maybe the consequences for one's actions, this type of deal. And then over time, as healing begins to happen, it creates this different fusion. And it's almost like, the best way to put it is a broken leg. If you look at a marriage as a body and you break a leg because somebody made a stupid mistake or chose to get in sin or whatever the case is, once that thing is fused back together, after the damage is repaired,
right.
It's almost like that's a stronger point of impact now.
Yeah. I've explained it like this, and this is something that everybody probably might not understand, but I've talked to my wife about this and some of the situations her and I are in, and even I've told this to the guys in the Ironman class.
Right.
Our life is like a picture.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the picture, you don't always see what's going on around you. Sometimes you have to step out of the picture and look at the picture and see what's really going on before you can understand all the turmoil around.
No doubt.
So just step out of the picture sometime and take a good look.
Yeah. Kind of take that 30,000 foot view.
That's it.
And get a better perspective. That's
sure.
I think that's good for anybody at any stage, to be honest with you, because, just changing the perspective, just changing the angle you're looking at something, flip it around, I mean, you could be looking at the same, me and you could have a can of Coke sitting here in front of us. You might be looking at the ingredients on one side and I'm looking at the advertisement on the other,
Sure. Sure.
So, I mean, we could be looking at the same thing, just coming from our different vantage points.
Exactly.
So that's kind of that's an interesting thought about stepping out of the picture. That's a good point of view. So once again, go back to Ironmen. When do you guys meet again?
First and third Thursday.
Okay.
At 6:30.
Okay.
We have an outdoor sanctuary that we basically built for us guys.
Okay.
We found that guys love the woods most of the time, even if you hadn't been exposed to the woods.
Sure.
Once you get into the woods, there's just something about being in nature and a guy,
right,
and men together that just draw men.
No doubt.
And so, just like, on the 23rd, we're going to have a deal called Stake and Rake.
Okay.
We're going to clean up around the sanctuary and around the old theater building and do some demo stuff and just get out there and sweat and
so
do
those
some
projects.
Another project.
Yeah.
But then we're going to feed all the guys steak for lunch.
Okay.
So there again, we found out if you feed them, they're going to come.
Right.
Some people work and can't come, but it is a tool that draws men in. And so I feed guys every Thursday that we have a class.
Okay.
They know, hey, even if they come from work, because I tell them, hey, you can come as you are. It doesn't matter if you're greasy. It doesn't matter if you just got off work. If you're hungry, come on. We're going to feed your belly, and then we're going to feed you spiritually.
There you go.
But the first and third Thursday at 6:30, and any man's welcome to come.
That's awesome. Man, I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Well, I've enjoyed talking to you.
It's been a while since we sat down.
Yeah.
I mean, we like you said earlier, we're a little bit more gray.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more calmed down.
Sure.
I know I am.
Sure.
You get you go through this life. Life is messy all the way around the horn, especially if you're married, got kids, and are trying to do what's right.
It's not always an easy walk.
No, it's not.
It's not always easy being a man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we just keep doing what we are called to do.
Yeah.
Do the best we can.
Yep.
And the thing that I've found out is when I keep my mind focused on the Lord, Jay, He provides everything.
Right.
All good things come from Him. He opens doors for us that we never knew could be opened, and He closes those doors too behind us so that the enemy can't come against us.
Right.
So He protects the faithful. So I'm just trying to walk a walk and try to be faithful.
Hey, that's all this life is about, man. Is trying to be faithful with what you can see to do.
Amen.